Academy Foundation presents the fifth law, where Fleming's rules provide a convenient way to show the sequence of transforming values. This diagram from the quantum relativity book uses variables from relativity and has a few errors beginning with the electron. The pressure-volume functions better describe ultraviolet radiation. Let's correct it. Electrons are mostly volume. Energy adds in as pressure, contracting the volume, snapping apart in opposite directions. Fleming realized he could use a hand to illustrate the directions of the variables. The fingers curl around the effect in the direction angular momentum gets rotated in or out. The volume never changes, only its scale. Value rotated in will rotate out two ways, as linear pull, like the wheels of an engine, and as an angular pressure front. The rotational functions are the field, rotating in as an expanding spatial axis at a right angle to the contracting rotation of output. They can define the same simultaneous space, distorting each other. Let's stop the animations, insert the left hand, and compare with typical representations of Fleming's rules. Notice first, the fingers are pointing to create a system of three dimensions. X is a whole real number, Y is angular in and out, the plane of X and Y in is real, and Z is the radius of rotation. It forms the hypercomplex plane splitting the two bicomplex axes. Its rotation is the function of transformation labeled D. Now we shift to the left hand, where the output creates an imaginary plane between the angular thrust of Y and linear pull of an imaginary x-axis where Y and Z intersect. Manifolds are an adaptive and distributive way to look at the variables. Here, the pressures are straight lines R and Y. Angular volumes are spheres, X and Z. And the transformative rotation connects the two sides in one system, where x dy is latent potential and r dz is discrete. Electrons, as transfer particles, provide a discrete context. The opposite action of the linear volume is angular pressure. The x and y variables for electrons are polarized and informational. The absorption spectrum provides bicomplex information. It isn't good by itself at showing polarization. Polarization makes the emission values look like a topographical map, showing height and depth. This is easier to see in CMB, where everything is separated. It is practically applied with television and other transmissions. The poles are pressure and volume. We can adapt for polarization by recognizing that these labels are reversible. We can then see variables go two directions and interact in two ways. The second way these interact is right and left separately. It splits the rotation, so now we will have 6 values going into the system. The opposite of diffusing volume is linear infusion, like forming the hypersurface of a singularity or surface tension. Revolving is basic orbital mechanics, converting between dynamic viscosity and infusion by virial theorem. Viscosity is a volume density, a thickness. Its opposite is a loose, watery flow. The gyration of flow is sinusoidal conversion to diffusing volume. The common rotation dilates the transformations incremented by revolution and gyration. Put another way, D represents the relationship between the cycle and the openness of time resisting the flow of change. To alleviate symbolic conflicts, we adjusted the symbols of kinematic relativity. These are values that can potentially propagate in waveforms like light. The tilde wave at the top of each symbol helps convey that message. We now have two sequences. Following our last breakdown, this sequence separates left from right. The reality, however, is that equal and opposite immediately follows, such that if we start with the infused, the opposite diffused immediately follows. Then the rotation and opposite gyration transforms linear pressure and volume into angular volume and pressure. All these variables adapt to context. as with using an electron as a transfer particle. This fifth law provides a breakdown in sequence to most of the significant variables. The laws make a few corrections to this model of key variables, but do not directly address the layers of matter, momentum, or compounding manifold details. Quantum relativity conceptualizes advanced topics in established physics to provide educational and practical tools. Our biggest problems in physics are human, specifically too much information and no accurate standardization of the concepts. Basically, advanced physics needs an introductory class to put it all together. Remember to subscribe and stay tuned for other educational videos. Thank you.